The Boston Celtics are your NBA champs. I will break down the game from inside the Garden and some of the bigger storylines, what it meant for this team to show patience, and what it means for Tatum as the face of the franchise. We're also going to talk some finals with this guy named Scott Van Pelt. He's pretty good. He's on television. We'll also talk U.S. Open. What does the win mean for Bryson, and what he would ask Rory, who we did not have access to right after a gut-wrenching loss, and then just some other nonsense. And of course, as always, life advice. Lucky enough to be in the building last night for the Celtics' 18th championship in franchise history, a 16-3 record in these playoffs. In the building, watching it, going, all right, what are you looking for? What's easy? What's hard for both teams? And early on, I was like, I don't know if this is going to be much of a game. Luka started 2 of 6. Kyrie didn't make a shot in the first quarter, 0 of 3. Gafford messes up 1. I would say 2 rotations on deep Drew Holiday stuff. I don't know what their rule is with that, but clearly Kidd had kind of given up on Gafford with some other moments. He only played 11 minutes last night, and Lively's the better option anyway. Lively came in at 7:26 left in the first quarter. The only thing, and I thought this was really telling, is Josh Green hits 2 threes in the first quarter. Now, the Porzingis story was a big part of this, because you're like, wait, specific matchups? Like, I'm just at the point where I think teams just mess with everybody else on their injury updates. But when the Celtics came out to warm up, Porzingis wasn't with them. He comes out later in the layup line. He's feeling it. The place goes crazy. And we're all watching him shoot, and he's like missing all the shots. You're like, all right, maybe he's just one of those guys who wants to get the misses out of the way in warm-ups. And then he checks into the game, and everyone's going nuts. And you can see immediately, like, he doesn't look good at all. So, like Luka's going to be looking for him. And that's exactly what happened on those Josh Green threes, the first 2. So the first play, he's got Drew on him. He gets it to the right side. Porzingis is in the switch, but Drew doesn't want to leave Porzingis by himself against Luka. And then Porzingis finds a way to kind of balance, like, what he's doing here, staying with Luka, staying in the paint, or then trying to contest down on Josh Green, and it's a wide open 3. The second 3, the Celtics try to pre-switch, avoiding Porzingis getting caught into a switch onto Luka. And after some traffic where it looked like Porzingis wasn't going to have to worry about it, they brought Josh Green all the way over from the corner to do it again. And then Josh Green hits the second one. And I thought it was very telling, because it was like, hey, that's what this Dallas offense used to look like when teams had to abandon everything they were doing to try to prevent Luka from just taking over. Because even with Luka's output, the Celtics didn't have to just wreck everything they were doing with their defensive priorities throughout the series. And that's why this became tougher. And it was just this moment where I'm like, oh, yeah, that's right. That's what the Dallas others used to be able to do. Just get awesome open looks, whether with lobs, the corner threes, or in this case, Josh Green hitting a couple up top, because you're so worried about Luka. And with Porzingis' limited ability, I should say, or limitations physically, they had to do like a little extra to protect him, and that led to those open shots for Green. It's 19-18 in the first quarter. Celtics go on a 9-0 run the last minute 39, and the place is going crazy. It's 4 buckets in a very short amount of time, 2 Dallas turnovers, and it felt like that was the game. Now, that's ridiculous to say, but now that we have the result, you're like, well, they never really caught him after that closing moment, and the place starts going crazy. So the rest of the game, you're kind of wondering, is Luka going to go off, or is Kyrie going to wake up? Kyrie went 0 of 3 in the first quarter, 2 of 8 in the first half, and he did not wake up at any point. But the others were no-shows again. This just was a much harder job for them against the Celtics than it was against the previous teams that they played, based on everything we just talked about and how you defend Luka. PJ and Derek Jones Jr. 1 of 9 from 3. And that's how I'll remember this series. The story of this series is, even if the other guys that step up, Boston probably wins the series. But knowing if you're Luka, there was really nothing. And Luka wasn't great last night, but there's just nothing else that you can go to, especially with Kyrie. The version of him that we expect, even a diminished version from the 17 version, is like, you need to take over for a quarter. You need to have a moment. You need to have some kind of run, a run that you had against Minnesota, a run that you had in those second halves against the Thunder. And it just never happened. So that means that everybody else is like, wait, I'm not supposed to do any of these things. Like, I was on the Hornets. I was on the Wizards. Like, this has been a cool story, and it was a great trade, and it turned Dallas around. So I'm not going to now regrade those trades because they lost the finals. The trades were great because they got to the finals, but there was just not another piece there to rely on offensively for Luka. So Boston gets up 26 points in the third quarter, 78-52, 9:10 left to go in the third. Boston scores 4 points from 9:10 until Hauser's non-committal floater. If you watch that one, he's like, I don't want to do this, but I guess I got it to now, and it goes in. That's 4 points from 9:10 to 2:09, 7 minutes and 1 second of game action. Wait, Boston's kind of doing it again here. But here's the thing. They can have that haunting, stagnant offensive moment that every Celtics fan is well aware of. Like, how is this team this good and can be that bad offensively for that long of a stretch, knowing that all the offensive statistics tell you it's one of the best offenses in the NBA? But like, wait, it's happening again, just like it happened at the end of game 3. Well, it's because Boston could always bank on its defense. And in those offensive moments, Boston's defense was terrific. Luka was exhausted. I think everybody was really exhausted in this game, to be honest with you. I think it's that much of a grind on you emotionally and physically to play at your peak and know, all right, I still have another 12 minutes to go in the fourth quarter. So the Celtics win the title, and it really wasn't scary at all. I want to talk about a few different things here. Brad Stevens. So he takes over when Ainge leaves in June of 21. I know how frustrating it was in Boston, and it felt like Celtics fans had kind of turned on him. Ainge always seems to be somebody that played a little bit worse than he deserved publicly, meaning that it was like, man, I don't know if it's just people don't like him as a player or what. It just always felt like the Ainge criticism was far more aggressive than it ever deserved to be, I thought. Because if you think about how this team has been built, like, I don't think there's many GMs that do what Ainge does in the Tatum draft. I think most GMs go like, well, Fultz is still supposed to be the guy, so I'll just take Fultz because if I'm wrong with this, at least I did what everybody else was going to do. And instead, he trades out of that pick, picks of another pick, and then adds Tatum. When he drafted Jaylen Brown prior to that, I remember doing that draft. That Cal team was terrible. I couldn't figure Jaylen Brown out. I've been wrong about him my entire career. And he saw something in him that I certainly didn't see. And I don't know who else would have taken him 3 in that draft. So if Ainge lays the foundation and puts up the frame, then Brad Stevens is the finished carpenter with this product. Because when he takes over, meaning Brad, you're like, okay, he's this terrific coach, but it seems to have gotten a little bit stale. Like, he doesn't actually want to coach anymore, but now he's just going to be the GM. Is he going to be able to do that? And there's an argument that he's even better than that than he was as a coach. He made 4 deals in less than 2 years that increased the talent level 3 through 5, 3 through 6 in a way that's very hard to do in a very short amount of time. And here's what I also love about Stevens is that he didn't really care about those picks. I remember years ago with Bill where I was like, I just think these picks, I know it's 20 to 29 and every fan base gets really excited about the guy you took at 23. Like, I'm sure some of you are still wondering how J.R. Giddens didn't work out, right? Length, score a little bit. Look at all that. Look at that wingspan, right? It's an exciting thing on draft night for your team to take one of those guys, and you kind of talk yourself into it, even though the history tells us there's just not a ton of value, especially if you're already an established team and you're thinking, who am I going to be able to take from like 15 on that can actually make this rotation and be a contributor to this team right away? And I don't know that a new GM would be this aggressive, being like, I'm not really worried about these picks, even when he did take a Langford, it took a Neesmith, but then flipping those guys and then flipping picks later on for a Derek White, who ended up being Langford, who we just mentioned, Richardson, a 22 first, which was Blake Wesley, and then there's that 28 pick swap. Worry about that later. They're like, hey, Malcolm Brogdon's a really good player. That would increase our talent 1 through 5. Let's see if we can figure that out. Or 1 through 6, if you're talking about Brogdon. So it's Neesmith, a 23 first that ends up going to Denver, which is Strother. So you're like, all right. Then the Marcus Smart deal, which a lot of people were wondering, like, how can they give up their heart and soul? How can they give up their toughness? You've heard my position on Marcus Smart a ton of times, so we're not going to go through all of that again. I always thought it was kind of weird that it was like, wait, if you think this team isn't tough, why is taking Smart away? Like, if you think the Celtics have all these problems, which again I did, and we'll get to kind of that 21 start here in a second, but I just felt like a lot of that stuff is just Tommy point stuff. where you get really excited about your favorite player, but you're ignoring that maybe there's actually some limitations with him where if the team did something different, you could be better. And they moved smart for Porzingis, who had a terrific year. Look, on record, I said, I was like, I didn't love the extension with his injury history, but it changed who they were. And they got a pick in that deal, which they then flipped to Portland in the Drew Holiday trade, where they're like, look, Drew is better than Brogdon. Rob Williams is hurt even when he isn't hurt. And then they move those firsts, that one this year and then the one in 29. So that's White, Brogdon into Drew, Smart into Porzingis. That changes who you are as a basketball team. And that's the stuff that I think is a little bit harder to do. And I don't know how many teams would say, yeah, I'll just start giving up these firsts, because reality is I don't even know if that guy's even going to play for the team that I'm running. There's also another part of this that I think is important. Whether it's the front office and ownership pointing to Mazzulla post Ime Udoka's drama and the moments where it's like, is Mazzulla actually the right guy? I can tell you this. Like, I know enough of the people over the course of the years of working for the TV station. Like, these are smart people. Okay. I had a hard time believing that they would just be dumb and be like, yeah, we'll just give it to Mazzulla because we're not good at this. And because Mazzulla's quirky, look, if he goes 30 wins and gives you those quotes, the fan base would be like, we have an insane person running the basketball team. But whatever it was, beyond the X's and O's, the timeouts, the substitution patterns, there really seemed to be a message that was consistently bought into by this team, which is really the primary job of being a head coach in the NBA. Are they still listening to you? All right. And it's very easy for these guys to tune anybody out. So I'm happy for Mazzulla. I'm happy for Brad. I'm happy that Ainge gets a little bit of credit after the fact. I'm happy for Wick, because when I first moved to Boston and started working for a radio station, there's a personal thing there where Wick reached out to me. Now, I tried to not bother him because I felt like it'd be annoying me bothering a guy who owns an NBA franchise, but there's never been a moment where he hasn't been awesome to me. And I know how much he cares. I know how much money they've spent on this. And I think they've been really aggressive owners, the entire group. But there's also a lesson, because if we go back to that 21 season that I referenced, the 21-22, where they end up in the finals against the Golden State Warriors, they were 16-19 on January 21st of 22. They were 23-24. And Bill and I did a pod right around that time. And I remember, because I don't like saying this if I'm not like around a team every single day, but I go, man, I think they're soft. This is a soft basketball team. Like, this group, as talented as they are with those two guys, it might not be it. It was the first time I was open to suggesting splitting the two guys up and trying something different, because you're like, how are they under 500? Well, things change quickly. They closed the season 28-7. They lost in the finals to Steph and the Warriors, which I don't think is some embarrassing thing. But at that point, it's just added to the different playoff failures, which I've always said, like 17 and 18, 20, they really count. 22, okay, it's disappointing we made it to the finals. 23 is a disaster. But all of this stuff, because they were ahead of schedule with these young players, like, how are they in the Eastern Conference Finals again? This doesn't even make any sense. All of that got added to kind of this hangover or anxiety about who they could be in 24. So I think there's a lesson in there, once again, which is always a good lesson to repeat, which I'm not sure that we'll follow this lesson, because the next team that's 3 years into playoff failures with a young roster, are we going to say, hey, let's hold off because look what Boston did? We probably won't. Maybe we should. But that might be the lesson in, like, wait, let's look back and think about those questions. Two incredibly young, talented, big wings that can score on their own and also can play defense. Isn't the entire league in the business of trying to find those guys? So I'm guilty of it too, because at some point you just go, maybe this won't work and they need some kind of change. But that's why whenever we do these off-season previews, I'm like, yeah, they'll probably just run it back, because you almost want to give yourself more chances to fail with your guys as opposed to failing by giving up on them a little bit too soon. The other part of this is that a title means something entirely different for this generation. And yes, there are older players that went years and years without accomplishments, and the joy that they have once they hold that trophy in their respective sport and hold it up. And they're like, the whole point of doing this, a decade plus in the league. Like, I'm thinking about like older baseball players, like finally having their moment. So that moment has existed in the past, but not like it exists now. Because when you're a player like Jayson Tatum, who, when I was watching the trophy presentation and the relief on his face, I'm thinking to myself, this guy's 26 years old. You think he's 38. Like, I finally did it. Like, you actually did it before a really nice list of Hall of Famers, some of the best players in the history of this game. And you did it at 26. I mean, hell, he turned 26 in March. And yet you can't tell him like, oh, no, you'd be fine. You'd be fine if it took a couple more years. Because this is if you're one of these players, the face of a franchise, an all NBA guy, flirting with the MVP conversation, even though I don't think he's in the class of like that first tier of players, but he's awesome. And it really is for all of these younger players, if you get to do what Tatum did last night, or a Giannis, or Jokic, who maybe doesn't care as much as the other two guys I talked about, it really is kind of your fuck you moment to the world, which I've always felt is a bigger part of this generation when we look at their accomplishments. I've mentioned this before, but I'm going to do it again because the access to hate makes this generation of athlete look at the things around them differently than any generation prior to them. And that's just the reality of the access of this stuff. When LeBron goes to the Heat, Nike runs an ad where he's a villain in a black hat. Because it's like, oh, everybody hates me now? All right, I'll embrace it. Kevin Durant had a Nike ad in 2017 that started with a fake sportscaster saying Durant shouldn't be the first pick, quote, he's too weak, followed by another guy holding a sign that says soft. Durant was like one of the most sure thing NBA prospects ever, by the way. James Harden had that one with Adidas that suggested that not playing defense was about his originality as a player. I love that one. Steph Curry's Apple documentary starts with Reggie Miller reading a negative scouting report on Steph. 20 minutes into the doc, they have Steph sitting in his car listening to guys calling to talk radio, dumping on the Warriors. Anthony Edwards gets eliminated by the Dallas Mavericks, and immediately Adidas has an ad up of a guy reading the receipts, the criticisms of Edwards as he's getting shots up. So the point is there is a new reward beyond the actual ring and the championship for the team and for the city, and adding to the resume of your career and how you're going to hold up against other great players. There is this ultimate reward of I got to do the thing that all of you said I couldn't do. And the day after you hold up that trophy, all of that doubt becomes irrelevant. You likely know him from his work on Everybody Loves Raymond as Shopper Number 2, episode Ray Buys Fruit, and also the host of Sports Center on ESPN. 2 decades in, his name is Scott Van Pelt.
Hello.
How many decades has it been? It's 2 plus 2 point what?
I don't know. It's like, I think this is the 10th year, which, Jesus Christ.
No. How long have you been there? Is it 25 years?
20. That's another JC, dude. 20, well, I don't know, 2001 was the first year. So we're like, I don't know, whatever this is.
Wow. Old. You're getting good at it.
Am I? Or I'm about to age out of this bitch.
Let's start with the finals, because you had an incredible studio show with legs, the whole deal, everything last night. So the first thing you think about with the Celtics pulling this off last night?
Just the patience that the organization showed. You know, that you and Bill are so immersed in this and have such a great feel for all the different organizations and whatever. But specifically, I think Boston, given your who you grew up with. And I just admire the fact that they, everyone's like, well, you can't, Brown and Tatum just not going to work. It's just done. It's redundant. It's just blah. And they're like, no. Whether they kind of couldn't punt or they just, whatever they did organizationally, the fact that they decided to stand pat with them, and then the additions that they make, and having a selfless sort of a guy like Drew Holiday that's just a pro that can do everything, and then Porzingis, who's capable of hanging massive numbers and whatever on a nightly basis, White evolving into a reliable 20-plus point guy and a great defender. I just think they were the best team all year long. And the thing about this league, and I said it on SportsCenter last night, Ryan, that I think what happens is we get bored with things we think we know what they are, and we're way more intrigued with the possibility of what might be. It's like a game show. What's behind door number 3? And so many teams are what's behind door number 3. And you think it's going to be the brand new car, and then maybe it's like a sofa. You know what I'm saying? And ultimately, Boston, all year long, they showed everyone who they were. They were the best team. And whether it's just the advanced metrics and different analytics, or just how many points did we score and how many points did you score, from October until now, they just showed that they were the best. And I said this, and I'm curious how you view it. All right, Butler was hurt. Giannis got hurt. I get it. Okay, Halliburton got hurt against Indiana. Fine. Luka's dragging along who knows what kind of scar tissue, taking shots and all the rest. Nobody looks at banner number 14 and goes, yeah, that was the year that so-and-so was hurt. I just don't think that's what we do. We don't do revisionist history with sharp pencils on who you faced and who you didn't. Do you hang a banner or don't you? They were the best team this year and they won. That's to me what I saw.
I do it with Toronto's, but that's personal. You're right. You're right. Because even though it was a really easy path and it was a boring finals, because they just ended up being an even worse matchup for Dallas than we could have imagined. And some of that was just Dallas's secondary guys, as I talked about in the open. Like, these guys were living a completely different life in those other series. And then against Boston, it's like, wait, this is actually a lot harder. Now I have to do stuff on my own. I wouldn't have picked any of the teams in the East. It depends. If Milwaukee had maybe figured it out, but it had been so up and down, then I'm really just kind of banking on the resume and top end part of Dame, Giannis, but I would have had to have seen it more and then to just buy into Giannis comes back, because I was listening to Doc with Bill when they did a pod last week, and that they thought, all right, well, maybe Giannis could have come back for this game or whatever. So I don't know that I would have bought into it then. And the funny thing with Halliburton being out is Nembhard turned into fucking Isaiah Thomas in that series. So
how about that?
It was still whatever you thought you were getting from Halliburton, but again, whatever, they got swept. So it's been a weird year, as I've touched on it throughout, because when you have the dominant profile that they have, there shouldn't be any doubt. And yet I still think there was doubt. And I don't know if it was because of the certain offensive things that I've touched on a million times, or if I think what was unfair is that because they had been there in 17 ahead of schedule, 18 ahead of schedule, 20 was disappointing. 21 was okay, whatever. 22 was the finals, but it was disappointing. 23 was a disaster. I still don't think they should have lost to that Heat team. And then that's all leading up into this year, but kind of ignoring the fact that Derek White's only been there a couple of years. Drew's new. Porzingis is new. It's hard. It's hard, especially with the new rules, even though they're going to have everybody under contract. It's just going to be very hard to ever have a team that is that deep 1 through 5. And unless you have some outstanding second, third year players that compensate your vets. But if your vets were that good, then you wouldn't be drafted that high. It's just going to be hard to have a 1 through 5 that's this good, even in those moments where it felt like their flaws were concerning.
And it's also going to be rare that you have that kind of that much continuity with star players that don't get there, because people just can't fight the urge to blow it up for whether they should or they shouldn't. People just get impulsive, they get impatient, and Boston didn't, and they added the right pieces. And again, I think we get bored with we know what they are. Well, what might somebody else be? And the league is a lot of that, right? Durant goes to Phoenix. You're like, ooh, when these guys all get healthy, huh? You're like, oh, maybe they don't. And then maybe actually, they got a point guard. Oh, shit, they don't have a point guard. Maybe anybody can protect the rim. No. Oh, they might get beaten the first. Yep, that's it. I think the intrigue of what could be and the possibilities of star players and how do they, are they cohesive, this or that, the other thing. Boston had a bunch of stars and a bunch of guys that were willing to I don't want to say accept roles, because it's like Drew Holiday's not just some little, you do a nice little job.
No, but you're right though. There's Drew has to really accept in a way where it's like you're going to have nights where you're just never going to be the first option down the floor. So that's tough
fine,
for a lot of guys.
But cool. I'll check whoever is the other team's one of their best options, and I'll be great at that. And then I'll facilitate. And how many times was he involved in hockey assists in this series, right? Where the ball would go, say, Tatum to him and then to Brown, or Brown to him to Tatum, or Tatum would feed him. That one game where Drew did have the big scoring night and Tatum had a ton of assists. Well, that's just being patient and just waiting, biding your time, and knowing that I'm one of the guys on our team who on a nightly basis is capable of getting 20 some odd. Did it in this series. Dallas just clearly didn't have that beyond the 2 that they had. And then Kyrie wasn't great in the series after he was all playoffs long. So it ends up being a pretty boring finals. But maybe it was a boring year if you're just from October till now, you just looked at what Boston was and just accepted them as what they proved they were, which was the best team in this league.
You had Legs all season. I mean, he was great. He did an hour with us, and it was just incredible stuff. So we all
Who did? I'm sorry.
know how you had Legs in studio.
Oh, right. Oh, he's so good.
Yeah. I mean, he came on and we just were talking playoffs. I think it was the conference championship, so it wasn't that long ago. And you just get done and you're like, my God, that's so much fun. But what were some of the things you think, because I watched last night, but I just want to share for the audience, like things that he kept kind of hitting on is like the story of this finals is like the things he was really pointing out to you and to your audience of like why this series played out the way it did.
He liked Dallas, and I couldn't understand why. Because I remember having Windhorst on before the finals, and I just said, why are we squinting so hard at Boston trying to find some flaw? Like, why are we doing this? And I guess I get it, because you look at who Dallas beat and how they beat them, and they created a lot of problems. Also, they made a shit ton of threes. And then in this series, the ball kind of got stuck, and guys don't make shots. I think they had 6 in the first one, 7 in the second, threes, and Boston just had this massive 3-point advantage. And if you're drawing up like, okay, how many guys does Boston have that can score 20 tonight? It's a much longer list than Dallas. This isn't really complicated. We'll take our 2 and just trust that Brown and Tatum are going to get at minimum 40, maybe 60. You say the same thing with Luka and Kyrie. And again, because Kyrie didn't shoot well, that really caused big problems. But Legs pointed out that he thought that Kyrie, for all the growth and all the sharing he did of how he felt like I wasn't ready for a lot of stuff in Boston, went through a lot of stuff in Boston, but I'm in a good place now. Okay, well, you still got to go there, right? It's like you can move on from your ex-girlfriend, but now you got to go have dinner at the Christmas dinner with your new family, and you got to sit there and look at each other, and maybe it makes you feel uncomfortable. Who knows? Maybe you're just tired. Maybe you just have a few bad games, whatever the case may be. But Kyrie wasn't good enough in this series, and Legs just said he felt like he was passive, and the scoring options for Dallas were just limited. And it was in many ways as simple as that. Those ancillary pieces weren't good enough. Ball got stuck, and then they were horrible at ends of quarters. Boston, they did it again last night. It's a 1-point game, about a minute and a half to go in the first. Next thing you know, it's a 10-point game. Sloppy possession, lackadaisical on defense after getting praised for a bunch of defense, and just, Windhorst went viral for going off on Luka, but was he wrong? Was he wrong about the bitching at officials? Was he wrong about him, getting blown by on defense? At that point, no, I don't think he was wrong.
No, I don't think he was wrong. I guess it was aggressive for Windhorst. So
for sure,
it made me pay more attention, and I was like, whoa.
But isn't that the key point though, Ryan? That when a guy's as reasonable and as measured as Brian always is, and then he's just like, you're like, whoa, you lean in because it feels. Maybe I don't know if it wasn't personal. I don't think he wasn't mad at Luka as a human. I think he just feels like you're better than what you're doing. This side eye nonsense of bitching at officials all season long. It just hurts your team and it hurts you. I said a while ago, and I'm sure it's happened organizationally, right? You just sit down, have somebody in your video ops group, just go through the games, put together a tape, like and one of your worst moments. Show it to Luke and say, is this
a listening session?
Yeah, well, sure. A listening session.
Nobody likes listening sessions, though. That's the problem. Luka wouldn't watch and go.
You know what? If we go back to our listening sessions, that's probably the appetite that Luka would have for somebody sitting down and telling him how he's supposed to act. Oh, I don't know what to do, huh? Yeah, okay. Yeah, let me listen to what you tell me how I'm supposed to host this thing. It's probably our answer.
Did you play anywhere? Oh, you studied calculus? All right. Thank you for your. I think I could guess how Luka would respond to that.
Me too.
And it's not like Windhorst doesn't know this because clearly he knows it. I just felt like, okay, everything you said, I would agree with, but he's the only reason they're in the NBA Finals. He's the
100%.
And then watching them play out the way they did in these games, like I don't really. Sure, he could have been better in Game 5 to start. Yeah, okay, no problem. But when you want to go over the list of like who was closest to meeting your expectations, he's the closest of any of the Mavs players. Because the Kyrie part of this is fascinating, is that sometimes in life being the Robin is the worst, all right? And I'm not trying to make this about you and I, but being being the second guy when everybody knows who the star is, that's not for everybody. I fucking hated it.
Yeah, but you live in a Batman house now, bro, so it's all good.
It had nothing to do with you, but I was like, I don't want. But some people are like, this is awesome. Like, I really don't have the pressure. I don't have to do any of these things. So when I looked at the Kyrie celebration, it was very, like, it was unbelievable what was happening. And part of it was based on what our expectations for Kyrie were. It was like, hey, man, it's been a pretty quiet season. Like, when's that point coming? I was wondering if there was going to be somebody in the Celtics media that's just a massive homer that was like, hey, do you know about the new Mavs ownership and some of the fundraising that's going on? Like, I was wondering if somebody was going to be a plant if the Mavs had gone up 2-0 in the series. Be like, all right, somebody ask him about international affairs. All right, yeah, let's see if he can. So Kyrie deserves like credit for having, based on our Kyrie standards, a very drama-free season. But there were games against the Thunder where you're like, wait, single digits again? But then we're going to hear in the next game after he lights it up for a quarter how it's the best scoring backcourt that we've ever seen in the history of basketball.
In history, yeah.
Right. And you're like, well, that seems like the Warriors weren't that long ago, were they? Like, how?
Collective
Do we still have that footage?
It's not the strength of the collective. I do think that irony is a word that gets used incorrectly. There was a song about it. But I think the idea of a guy that didn't want to play second fiddle to LeBron at LeBron's peaks of his powers, then very comfortably becoming the number two. Like, nah, I'm good over here, man.
But that one's different though. I actually side with Kyrie on that one because once Kyrie found out that he was a piece of the chessboard for LeBron to move around somewhere else, then he was
that's fair.
Right.
That's fair because he's always going to be operating on a different sort of however many 3D level chess that you want. That's fair. But still, to your point about do you want to be a two or the Robin? You know, he's that there, and he's clearly that there. That's Luka's team. Luka's the guy.
Yeah, but because Kyrie's never been the one. I mean, I guess he was with Boston, but it wasn't really that long. And then he missed the other playoffs. So the only one experience that he really had, I guess, is in 19. So technically you say, okay, he's the one. But here's what I think of wrapping up a bow on the entire Kyrie, at least Boston piece of this. All right.
Okay.
I never cared that he left. I cared that he just kept adding. There was stuff with the Nets. Like, I don't care about the Nets. And there was just stuff with the Nets. I'm like, come on, man. So then you kind of felt good about the basketball part of this because he hits that game-winning left-handed runner against the Nuggets in the regular season. And you just go, oh, my God. Like, here we go. Like, he's back, and everybody's talking about how happy he is and how great everything is. And I don't know if the Boston thing messed him up because then I was looking for that. I went back and looked. I'm like, okay, wait, can I find some kind of number that tells me that against Boston, when he's in Boston in the playoffs, that there's this drop off from him because the crowd stuff actually does get to him? And there really wasn't anything because he had 2 39-point games at that place in the playoffs. So I'm like, okay, well, that theory doesn't really hold up. So I brought it up and then kind of shot it down. But I do think it was a factor. And even with his answer about, the Celtics being a cult or whatever, when you heard the entire answer, in fairness to Kyrie, it wasn't like he was destroying. Like, when I saw it in word form without the video, I'm like, okay, that seems to be like him taking a bit of a jab. But I would say this to Celtics fans, okay? 2 things. When Kyrie checked out of the game last night, and I was in the building for it, it was like all the stoppage stuff had already happened. All the new Mavericks had already checked in the game. They were waiting to take the court. They were waiting to inbound. And then Kyrie goes around to kind of like dap up and hug every single guy on the Celtics side of it. And the funny thing is, at that point, the arena just wants to win the championship, and now Kyrie's holding it up. So in a moment where he's actually trying to be gracious, and you could also argue that maybe he was trying to make it about himself and all this different stuff, but in maybe a moment where he was trying to heal or repair, because I do think he's been there's been answers that he's had where I think he's been very genuine and being like, hey, there's things I did wrong and all this kind of stuff. Like, it seemed like it mattered to him, that dynamic with the crowd booing him and chanting that he sucks for all of these games, that I don't know if he was trying to just have some kind of resolution for himself, or maybe he was making that moment about himself. But for Celtics fans, think about the arc of the story. This guy tells you he wants to stay. He leaves. He dumps on the place at every possible turn. And then he had to be in the arena as the trophy was presented to your franchise. Like, I think it's over now. Is
for
my
sure.
point.
And I get what you're saying because it took a while, right? I mean, it's like I got to dap up you. I don't know you, but you're I'm going this way and you're sitting there. So there's that kind of awkward exchange. Some people I'm sure you have some with, maybe others you don't. I have chosen to view this whole thing as sincere. I understand the kind of everyone wants to be hostile towards everyone at all time. No one's allowed to grow. No one's allowed to make mistakes and F up and then do better. I think he's done better. I've listened intently to the way he's spoken, and I think he says a lot of stuff that sounds really healthy and good for him. And so I just felt like once he got so far down the line, it was hard to walk past people and not sort of acknowledge who he was walking past. And again, you were there, I wasn't. So yeah, it kind of took a while, but my read on it from throughout was that this was a guy that's in a totally different place. If we talk any U.S. Open, I think you could say some of that about DeChambeau, a guy that just sort of did some stuff. You're like, what are we doing, brother? And we're all allowed to get better, I guess, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, there's a bad TV topic of like who's kind of rebranded themselves better, Kyrie or Bryson.
I think Bryson's got a big ass trophy, so that's going to be an easy one at the moment, right? At least.
Okay, well let's because I even talked about this with Bill, like the way winning makes you, I think sometimes like now I can't say anything bad about you. Right. And that's almost the point of
it's Kevlar.
It's Kevlar. Now you can't. I'm like, yeah, but isn't this still accurate? Don't care. It doesn't matter. And for Bryson, look, he'd already had one, so this isn't like it's his first. But it really felt like for a time there, he was the most unliked guy on the tour. Had the pivot already happened, and then what does him winning mean now?
Look, the thing about when he won at Winged Foot was it was still pandemic and there's no one there. Like there's some which is every now and then I'll do a thing where you just remember that thing, right? Where it was this game is just no one there. And then, well, there was an SEC game. There were people there. I was like, it was LSU. Those people, you weren't telling them they couldn't come out. Like, I'm good. We'll pour some bourbon on it. But
yeah, there was a moment that I think even in it, I was like, we can't be outside.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Are we? If we're not good outside, where are we here? I do think that anyway. the magnifier of the crowd and the clear. I mean, I asked them the other night, like they felt like they were the wind in your sails. You know, you're a numbers guy, you're an analytics guy, but it felt like you were a way more emotional guy playing off that. And he's like, yeah, they met everything, and you see how popular he is.
But how did that happen so fast? Because the guy that has the rope fight footage seemed to be at like the low of what he got mad at the rope.
Yeah. There's a fairly long list of stuff with the guy. I mean, look, he's different. He's a numbers guy and all the physics. And it's like, he's one of those guys that's smart enough to talk in a way that maybe it's true, or maybe he's full of shit. And when you're talking to me about these greens and the this and the physics and the humidity, and it's like, can you make the putt or can't you? And there was a lot of that he was just different. And then it was like, hey, I'm going to eat 12 pieces of bacon, 4 steaks, drink 16 protein shakes. My swing speed's 200. I look like if you prick me with a pin, I'd fly around like a balloon. And people just were done with it. You know, they'd had enough of that bit and the YouTube videos and the running around, like, enough. And there's somewhere you could say, well, maybe that's just because golf is a little bit too serious and takes itself too seriously. And I would agree with that. But I feel, and I told him this the other night, Ryan, when he came on the show. When he came to Butler Cabin Thursday and Friday at the Masters, because he played really well. Number one, he looks fantastic. As a guy who himself is well fit, he looks so much healthier because he's not doing whatever that protein shake food routine is. And he just felt like he was in a totally different energy and headspace. And it was obvious. Like sitting with a guy, and you've talked about this through the years, right? A guy comes in for an interview, like you got to work pretty hard to fuck up the interview. Like you got to
you
really
have to be a disaster to get 7 minutes wrong.
But it can happen, and we've lived it. And he came in, and it was just in just a fairly brief window. And you do a little bit of chit chat off air. I just thought, all right, man, the whole vibe is different. And enough so that I told everybody that hey, how's Bryson? They're like, he was awesome, man. I mean, totally felt different. And then he's going out and he's played great. And he talked about rock bottom. He lost his dad. And I think the thing about the live, and everyone can talk about the money and this and that. I get it. But the thing that guy, I think, has that really he needed was this team. Like, and this could sound corny, but I really believe this is true. He's part of a team, and he's got these guys that now he's got his crew. And ironically enough, or interestingly enough, see, I just used irony wrong. Charles Howell is one of his teammates, and the shot that DeChambeau always said he struggled with was the long bunker shot. It's hard as hell. Charles Howell helped him with it. He ends up winning the U.S. Open in part because his teammate helped him work on a weakness that was certainly a strength on Sunday. And I just think all of what I'm saying here, rambling as I do, is that he has just gotten to a way better space. And people are rooting for him. He plays a really entertaining game of golf. He hits it 8 miles, and he makes a shit ton of birdies. Almost won the PGA, and now he wins the U.S. Open. Like he went 6th at the Masters, 2nd at the PGA, and he wins the U.S. Open. No one's played better in the majors than him. Rory, who obviously lost in a brutal, bitter fashion, he called him a star, DeChambeau, and he said he's a star the game needs. And I think that's pretty telling when Rory was on the other side of the whole whatever, which feels like it's died at this point. But DeChambeau, there's just a lot baked in there, and he was an incredibly popular champion on Sunday.
Okay, let's talk Rory. And before you just jump into wherever you want to go, I didn't understand golf prior to working with you, and then just talking about it and the lessons, the stuff like over and over when we do interviews with golf people and then getting to know somebody like your golf crew, it was incredibly educational for me because there was like a starting point of zero, right? And like these moments, well, how does that happen? It's like, well, this is how this happens. Or how come this doesn't happen more often? Well, because that's not what happens. And the whole, like this traveling concert of golfers coming to your city every weekend, that those Rory moments seem impossible for us to understand away from the course, but yet this is kind of what this sport is. In those moments, it's just that much harder than people realize.
Yeah, and there's, the fact that it's singular largely. It's just you and your caddy, and these anymore people have teams, so to speak. You have mental coaches that are helping you with all the baggage. But just talking to our boy Stanford Steve about it, we go out on the road, and he's like you in this sense. Like, obviously he played all these sports at such a high level, but golf was something kind of new to him, and the whole thing fascinates him. It's just like it is. It's like 150 dead shows, and each person is their own little tribe, and they show up in Louisville for the PGA, and it's like, all right, where are we staying? Where are we eating? Are we hooked? Are we going to go out? But it's singular, and it's hard, and it's difficult to win. And Rory's at this incredibly high level, and he's been great, and he is great. And now you're trying to knock this door down. You've been hearing for a while now, I hadn't won a major in a while. 4 is a lot, but it's not 5. And that each one more feels like a lot. And now here he is with a chance to get it. And it looks like he might. And then he doesn't in the way that he doesn't. And it lands heavy. And I get it. I get it. He's going to take a bit of a break. And I just think it's a lot because you can't be like,
I can't imagine. I just can't imagine being him this week, and I know everybody has failures, but like those moments, these small putts where you just go, like, that's going to be tough. He's not thinking about his money. He's not thinking about his resume. He's not thinking about his life and how great his life will be moving forward. That's the kind of thing. I mean, you want to talk about blown saves. And I think you said it like in a really great way too, because I was thinking about that moment of like but at least like in football, it's the play and there's all these things happening and maybe you get punished or maybe you make the catch or whatever. In basketball, it's like, hey, you've got to make a decision within a few seconds here. But that walk all the way up to be like, all right, this is what I need to do. And he's watching Bryson behind him the entire time. Like the way your head can just start taking over with these awful thoughts and the power to try to eliminate those. Like not everybody is the same when it comes to that.
You're right. And the thing about that sport that fascinates me is that the elements that you're describing, because in basketball, like last night. I mean, and last night was not a great example because it was mostly, mostly Boston in control. But there are these little moments where it's a loose ball and things happen in a fraction of a second. There's no time to think. It's instinct. We watch this tape. I know what the tendencies are, but I'm going to react in real time. And then I got to get the ball and I'm going to kick it ahead. And then you're going to make a three or you're not. And then off that, and then we back at it again. Golf's like, oh man, I just hit it in the crap again. It's hot as hell. I just missed a putt. Now I got to walk up there and think about all the things I got to do. And how do you put yourself in a positive spot where you're like, I'm good. I got this. And then, or now you're looking at this putt on 18 and you're Rory. And that part was really hard because it's so short on TV, but it's downhill and it breaks and you have to, he would have had to play it. I talked to one of his instructors, Butch Harmon, yesterday about it. And he's like, you got to probably play it a ball out, but it's 3 feet. Like you can't make your brain believe. Your brain knows it, but you can't make your body believe that you have to do that. And all you can do is think about it. And all you can do is think about the outcome if you make it or if you miss it. And it's just you. And it doesn't happen quickly. It's just 5 hours of walking with your thoughts and thinking about what happens if. And now I'm 8 under and he's 6 under and I'm going to win this son of a gun. Now I'm like, I got 5 and now it's, or you lose the way you lose. And he's like, look, I'm going to take a break. And I don't blame him at all for just trying to step aside. And I don't want to take, this happened. I mean, we saw a guy that battled depression and he took his life. And that's something that a lot of these guys, everyone cared for Grayson and hoped that would be not obviously be what happened. But I think all of them recognize the difficulty of a singular pursuit with no home games. You're just never home. And this is where the people listening, I think, and you have smart listeners, so they're going to nod and know what we mean. But this is where you can roll your eyes and go, hey, man, he won 2.5 the other day. Cry me a river. I got to get up and go to work. No shit, buddy. He's better at what he does than you are, and that's the perks of that. But what comes with that is the stakes in the stage and failing in a public way. He's the man in the arena, and that's what comes with it. The good's the good, but the bad can be heavy, and it's just a lot for these guys to wrestle with. And I sympathize with that because we're all human.
You'll interview him at some point. What do you think you'll ask him, or how do you think you'll ask him about it?
And I think I made the point on SportsCenter, as much as it sucks, part of this is just like Norman melted over 5 hours at Augusta and lost a tournament that he was destined to win. And then he stood there in the dark under the trees and he answered, which had to suck. Phil Mickelson, 72nd hole, he's going to win the U.S. Open, the one he never won. And he pulls out his driver and he hits it off a tent and makes double. And he stood there and he said, I'm such an idiot. And Rory he split, and I get wanting to leave, but he's just never done that. And then he spoke to the fact that it was like maybe the worst day of his professional career. And I think what I'd ask now is, you didn't speak that day, and as you're pulling away, like what was it? Not that you were running from, but what was it that just you couldn't process in that moment? Just knowing someone's going to say, why'd you miss the putt? And you didn't know the answer. Like, I'm not going to give them the answer, but you left. And I get it. I get wanting to, but what was it in that moment that just made the process completely untenable? Because no one's been more of a stand-up dude than him. No one. And, I guess you just can't process the answer, because it's how'd you feel? Why'd you miss? What happened? No, who wants to do that? Like Luka, I'm sure didn't want to sit there last night and go, so that was great, but you guys just got stomped. No one wants to do that part of it, but unfortunately it's a part of it. And I don't feel entitled to it. Like that's what they always turn into. You media guys think you're entitled to it. Well, no, it's just part of what it is. Just if he won, we'd asked him about winning, and he lost, and you're curious sort of how do you process it,
I want to talk about the new pod because you relaunched the SV Pod with Stanford Steve. How are the listening sessions going for that?
We're good. what we wanted to do, we wanted to have a place where we could lean into the football stuff with him and do probably go heavy during college football. But what we found is just two middle-aged dads just chopping it up. We've enjoyed it. I feel like it's become a very local pod. I talk about my local friends. It's very inside the Beltway. It's
not a national show anymore.
No, not really. It's a very niche audience. But the thing about, and I obviously, anytime that I get the chance to do this with you is I enjoy it. I love it. I really enjoy the chance to do it. We needed to figure out like, what are we going to do? And how are we going to support it? And you see what it is now. It's not just an audio space. You got to have these different components, and the folks from Omaha have been awesome. And I'm actually, as you know, I had a fire in my house, still not back in my house. This is not my home. I'm going to have a space in my
Green
house.
Screen?
I'm saying again?
Green screen right now?
No, this is an actual
some nice
home we've been in for a while.
Incredible.
There's very nice remnants in this home. Higher end remnants.
That's not Home Depot.
No, sir. There's like a leather.
We love Home Depot, but I can just tell.
Yeah, no, wonderful,
finish.
But maybe not for higher end leather bound remnants. But when we get back in the house, I have a space that we just created just to have the ability to do it in my home. Won't be able to see the Pacific over my shoulder. Hey now. But I just think the ability to just have conversations with people is something that mattered, and I always enjoyed doing it. It was just figuring out how are we going to support and promote, and the folks from Omaha were able to sort that out, and I'm grateful for them giving us that chance to do it, because obviously we need more podcasts in the world.
I'm playing Pinehurst in a boys trip this October.
Are you?
By the way, yeah. Let's just say guys were like, can we change the location after watching what happened this week?
It's a lot.
No, we're thrilled. We're excited. We're super pumped up. The guys have not gotten together in a very long time. So we have one friend, shout out to Chris Sullivan, who's put
it's
together
a hard
the
golf
group.
course, my friend. It's just a really difficult golf course. Those greens are very, very, very hard.
Yeah, it looks like it'll be challenging.
So
I had been playing for the first time, kind of coming back to it this year, and out of the gates, I'm playing pretty well based on what your expectations would be. Not playing for 20 years and then going like, okay, I'm going to play. I'm actually going to play.
But you know what's weird about that? I think that go ahead. I don't go ahead. I'll come back to what I was going to say, because you were getting ready to say something.
Right, because then I needed to sell the next part of it. So then I get invited. I played out at Bel Air, which was amazing. And I wasn't playing that well. And there's a caddy there that had listened to you and I, watched you and I over the years. And I was like, what am I doing wrong? He's like, I'll fix you in 5 minutes. So we did a little lesson, bringing the old hands inside.
There you go.
There we go. Throwing the grounders out to second base, keep the hands inside. And I was like, man, this is life-changing. So now, as I took the lesson and I start working at the range, and I'll even pull up to the par 3 near my house, and I'll just go chip balls for an hour.
There you go. Short game.
On 60s, 58s, and then maybe a little 7 action if I want, depending on kind of what kind of slope I'm working with.
Who am I talking to?
Right. Because when guys will play with me, like, you can hit it, but it's not always great. Get yourself into some trouble. But some of the handwork around the green is shocking, considering how aggressive the tee stuff is. So we try to dial all this back. So I put together all of this stuff. I got fitted for the most expensive shafts imaginable.
Expensive shafts.
And the guy's like, no, keep swinging. I was like, I don't know if I'm going to swing this hard. He's like, no, you have all the swing speed. Keep swinging harder and harder and harder. And he's like, these are the perfect. Yeah, he's like, these are the perfect shafts for you. And the whole time I'm like, I guess I'll get these shafts, but I can't fathom that this is actually how I'm going to swing every single iron shot for the rest of my career. So probably have to replace these at some point. So anyway, invited again down to Newport Beach. My guy, Chad, who came on, trainer to the stars. Joe Staley, ever heard of him? Left tackle. And Jake Knapp's brother. Okay, Jake Knapp, who's now on the PGA Tour and looks like he's full of all the skills. I would defer to you
He's
on
got
this
the
one.
good stuff.
Yeah.
Won it. I saw him at Augusta. Actually, went up and introduced myself, and I'd never met him, and I just love when people earn their way to that place because that's how you get there, right? You didn't win some contest. You won a tournament, and it means you're good enough to be here. And Knapp moves it, man. I bet does his brother kill it? Like because Knapp's not a big, huge dude, but he destroys the ball.
Right. So his brother's Ryan. So there's going to be some money.
Ryan?
It's going to be some money involved, and they're like, all right, what's everybody's handicap? And I'm like, well, I haven't really done that. But I knew in my head, I was like, from wherever you were with this magical breaking 100 start after not playing for 20 years and shooting a 90 one day, I go, just put me down for like a 22, 23, whatever. And I go, and then if after 9 you think it's bullshit, then we'll just readjust. And of course, the one guy's like, well, that's dangerous. Like the hustle's on. I proceed to play the single worst round I have ever played, going all the way back to like when I first actually tried to play golf.
That's always summer. That's always a lot of fun.
Yeah. I mean, just atrocious shit. Never could figure out what was wrong. It was just a disaster the entire time. And meanwhile, all 3 of those guys, including Knapp, who had his brother, or I don't know if they shared the course record, but I think the brother that we were playing with currently at that point had it or lost it to his brother. So it was one of the worst times I've ever had on a golf course.
So what happened?
I tore my calf. My calf, so I haven't been playing. Yeah.
But what happened? What happened from what was the guy's name at Bel Air? Mike?
Matt.
Sorry. Matt fixed you, hands inside, second base. Like what? You totally lost the swing thought?
You know what I was? You know what happened? I was becoming a range guy. I was becoming a range and chip guy.
Ranger Rick.
Like
Got to be able to take it. Got to be able to take it from the range to the first tee, Ryan. It's really what it's about.
Exactly. Like, hey, you're gonna keep practicing your free throws. You're gonna check into the fucking game here.
So and now so after the calf, So wait, the last time you played was this catastrophe?
A full 18, yeah. Yeah,
Okay.
And this is not the recipe for success at Pinehurst is what I'm telling you. So I got to go on a full court press starting now. I got to get back to it.
Yeah, but here's the good news.
Inside. You
got really expensive shafts, and you've been working on the wedge game, which is going to be important. The whole notion of playing fairly well after not playing at all, I think makes sense because you don't have any bad habits, and you're naturally, obviously, athletically gifted. We can see it.
Yeah, well,
so
no need to say it, but thanks.
It's just sure. You're going to have natural power. You're not going to have to wrap the club around your ear to whale it. Just that shoulder turn, and then boom, a little speed through the ball. I feel good about it. I think we got to get back to Matt. Also, just because you go back to Bel Air, how good is talk about just the vibes are immaculate. That place is pretty pure.
The Bel Air experience really was something special. When I had Nance on, Nance and I were talking off the air, and I don't know that anybody truly understands. You would know this well, but like you could think of Nance like some way, like he's hosting these worldly events. He's the face of this network for like 40 years. Like, could he even be normal? Like, can you be that and also be like normal? And then when you get him away from that, he actually was like so normal about everything. This is coming out wrong. So I don't know what I'm even trying to say, but it was funny because I asked Nance, I was like, do you belong to any courses, any clubs in LA? He was like, oh yeah, a few.
I can get out, get a 9 in, get a little evening 9.
a lot of the local munis have been pretty good about getting me a tee time. So I got the invite. Yeah, I got the invite out there. Marty Fish invited me when I first got here. He's like, come play with me. And then he was like, oh, what do you shoot? And I went, well, probably break 100. And then he goes, is that even fun? And I went, okay. And then he's like, not to be a dick. And I was like, you're doing an awful job not being a dick. Right. Is
that
now.
Like the Mohegan Sun trip? Like, what would you be comfortable playing a hand? That's the same.
Exactly.
That's the same exact vibe. Sorry.
Yeah, that's the exact same thing. Hey, man, let's start hanging out all the time, going down to the casino, playing some cards. What are you comfortable losing? Not that.
I just
Bel Air, though, it really is. It's this old meets. It's not old meets new. So I'm not doing a great job at this, considering this is what my job is. But we played with somebody who had been like kind of a lifer, had grown up around it. So because we were playing with this guy, normally if I was getting a tour while I'm struggling through around 18, I'd be like, I don't need the tour, man. And actually it made it awesome because he was like, that's what this is. And this was over here. And this is what this means. And this is, so it was this history lesson, which, I love the old archives. And it was, even though I didn't play well, it's probably the best place I've ever played and the most fun I've had.
The best places in the game, I think, are the ones that know they're great, but aren't trying to flex on anybody because they're just comfortable with what they are. There are clubs that are super pretentious and want you to feel, what's the line about, I'll just say another club in Los Angeles that they're not comfortable till you're uncomfortable. That's the ethos of the place. And you're thinking, well, why would that be? If you have a guest come, you want them to feel most welcome. And I think a place like, obviously, Bel Air, that's the good stuff. I just did notice as I was watching on this screen that I was at the beach this weekend, and I didn't apply enough sunscreen. And it was this year at the upfronts, Ryan, I got a chance to meet Ryen Reynolds and tell him that I look like an avocado that had sex with an older avocado, like Deadpool. The difference is that there was no explosion. There was no accident. This is just sort of what I'm working with. And he was very gracious and said, no, it's working out great for you. But I do kind of have the Deadpool going at the moment where I sort of a Hellboy, kind of a mess looking at the moment. A lot of flaking of skin and freckly. Jesus Christ.
Your appearance always matches my expectations, so I wouldn't worry about it.
All right, pal. That's good.
Reynolds, you think you and him connected at all?
A little bit. I
see that.
It was a hell of a doubleheader. Met Emma Stone, and
wow, now I'm jealous.
And then she said I actually had done recorded something for her husband, and she was appreciative of that. And I'm thinking in my head, she thinks I'm some other person. I think because I don't know that I did that, but I didn't want to ruin the moment. I just said, well, I'm hope you enjoyed it, and if you ever need anything, I'm happy to. But I didn't know what to do. I just wanted not to say anything ridiculous. And then not long after that, these were at the upfronts in New York City, and then Ryen Reynolds. And the good news is, when we would have Hollywood types on the show and they'd tell us in advance, oh, they're such a big fan of the show. And then Russillo would always get super aggressive and go, yeah, what segments do they like? Yeah? Tell me a segment that they like that we did. What do they like? The 2:00 reset? What do they like?
Well, that was the Denzel. That was the all-time Denzel one.
I didn't want to say
learned that lesson. Yeah, I learned it very early that it was like a year after. And they're like, no, he's a huge fan of what you guys do. And so he wants to come on. I was like, hey, Denzel, what's up, man? Fucking almost just tackled. And I went, okay, there's a lesson here somewhere. So yeah, okay. So you're on it. Keep rolling.
Thankfully, it was an instant sort of a recognition and gave me it's an honor to meet you. And I said, well, that's probably overstating it, but it's great to see you. And I got to tell him the Deadpool joke, which I got a big kick out of because I had just come from being in Louisville at the PGA Championship when someone saw me and they said, hey, you should get some sunscreen on there. And I said, no, it's fine. I look like an avocado, had sex with an older avocado, which is what I said to them. And then to Ryen Reynolds, who said it was an honor to meet me, but he was very kind, very gracious. And that was a big one. Met a couple of superstars there at the upfronts.
Yeah. It sounds like it. Emma Stone. Wow.
Yeah.
Maybe Gosling one day. You know what we did here though? What I liked that we did is that we did usually what was one of my least favorite things is when we had limited time, 7 to 9 minutes on the radio show, but we talked golf. We talked about how's your swing, hit them straight, and then I would just look at Scott and go like, "Come on!" Like we just wasted a question. And Scott's so much nicer than I am, and he's a massager of the interview, especially when
but you're way better because
I was young and abrasive. Yeah.
No, but you also were very, very educational for me because you taught lead with the fun, start with the fun, because we'd inevitably 8 minutes into our 7-minute interview, you'd ask the fun question, then we'd have great stuff going, and then me, the worst, saying goodbye to anyone of the interview. Then we'd reach 14, and I'd still be not just milking the bit, I'd be beating it to death and can't say goodbye. So these are things that hopefully I've shed those over time. but you had to live with him, and I apologize for that.
I see big things. Years
I'm
25
hoping.
to 30.
I'm hoping, man. Fingers crossed.
I think you're getting better every night. I watch. I go, he's finally getting it. He's finally getting there.
Every now and then, I'll have a good segment, but that's, you're just trying to have a good. And then obviously you want to tease better because that's really important.
You are the
thing about
best,
us
man.
is that
You're the best.
If we do this when we're 100, we'll still have that one little pebble in the shoe that pissed us off that we'll make sure we air it out. Just for us, right?
Yeah, I didn't even think we were doing it that much. I think we've
I don't think
better.
so either.
I think we've gotten better. But no, you really are the best. It's appointment watching in an industry where that doesn't happen a lot anymore, and all the studio stuff you guys do after the biggest events, it's like the go-to. And you, Steve, and everybody that works on the show, keep doing everything you're doing because it's hard to stand out right now the way you guys do. So appreciate it.
Likewise, I appreciate that a lot. And as we've said every time at the end, I'm thrilled for everything that has gone as great as it has. And one of these times, I'm going to threaten you with a good time, and I'm going to show up in your neighborhood, and we'll see the new spot, and we'll go by whatever that place is in the neighborhood, which was just the best. What's it called? Are we allowed to talk about it?
What, the 900 Club?
That place.
Yeah.
I want to go there again.
Well, you got the VIP access, and not everybody gets that. I don't even get it. And that was a night where Scott was just like, "Are you serious with this? Like, what is this? What goes on in this mild mannered Surf City neighborhood village?" And I was like, "Some nights it does." So the podcast is out. Which days? Get that promo in there for you and Steve.
Okay, it's SV Pod. I don't know. We tape it on Mondays, and then
great promo.
I don't know. It's
fucking nailed it.
Well, I need to do a better job of making it something that matters, but it does matter. And I appreciate the help. But SV Pod, me and Steve tape stuff on Mondays. It's going to be summertime. It'll be sporadic, I'm sure. But then football, we're actually hoping to do something. And maybe it could end up being like a late night Saturday night, early morning Sunday thing, just to kind of do a deep dive because everybody's going to do the Monday of the NFL. It's like, who's doing that? Instant reacts to what happens between whomever. So hopefully that's going to be able to happen. But we'll have a better idea of it then. I'll come on and do a better job promoting it then.
Yeah. All right. Well, sounds good. And I see you've got your chicken box shirt on from Rocky.
Shout to Packy.
Oh, or Packy. So maybe we'll see you on the East Coast this summer. I miss you, man. Talk to you soon.
Appreciate you, brother.
You want details? Fine. I drive a Ferrari 355 Cabriolet. What's up? I have a ridiculous house in the South Fork. I have every toy you can possibly imagine. And best of all, kids, I am liquid. So, now you know what's possible. Let me tell you what's required.
Shout out to Kyle joining us up late last night, right? Taping with Bill and his dad.
Yeah. It's finally over. We're going to start recording normal times. It's the best time of the year.
Sorority is here as well.
What's up? I think just to update the folks, take a victory lap. I think I did win our playoff draft, 25-17. So shout out to the Mavs for making the finals. Helped me out a lot.
Oh, okay.
Way to start.
Hey, you got to take the W's when you get them, I'll take it.
What was my record?
I had 25 points. You had 17. So
25 to 17. Yeah. So
yeah.
You actually smoked me there at the end. Why? Because
you
had the Mavs?
Yeah, the Mavs just carried me throughout the whole. And the Pacers helped me out a lot too.
You know what? I like that. I like the way we did that, though. I can't wait to do it next year. Pretty excited. I'm already excited. Already doing some prep.
Let's go.
You guys want to hear a good story about your boy before the game last night?
Always.
Before we get started? Okay. So I had a friend who I brought to the finals a couple years ago, and he goes, if they go to the finals, I'm bringing you. So I was like, all right, no problem. So I went with him on his ticket, and we had they were awesome seats, 18 rows up, but we were right at center court. So really good spot. And he was flying down from Vermont with his group, and I was already in Boston. So he's like, look, I don't think I can make dinner and the whole deal, and let's just meet there. I was like, no problem. And I also knew even if they won, I was like, I can't really go out tonight because I got stuff to do all day tomorrow and whatever. And So I don't know if it's going to be one of those nights. And he was like, I don't care. Doesn't matter. Like, it's about the banner. It's about the banner. I was like, yeah, okay, no problem. So he sends me my ticket, and I'm like, I'm just going to go over now, and I'll just go into the arena or whatever. But I didn't have like a pass to walk around. I was like, I'll just hang out. So I get there probably like 50 minutes before tip, and he says he's still like 20, 30 minutes out. So I'm like, I don't want to just sit in my seat because I'm going to be in this thing for like 3 hours tonight. I was like, let me see if I'll go down to the Putnam Club, because I'll either know someone or there might be some kind of thing I can scan on this. Because he was saying like, hey, there's a thing that we have on our ticket that can be scanned so we can go to that thing at halftime. But he was talking about something entirely different. So I just assumed it's like most arenas, you just have this kind of halftime hangout thing where you have to have some kind of pass to get in. But in the past, it usually hasn't been an issue. All right. So I'm walking around the concourse, and I go to one of the security guys. I goes like, hey, what's the best way for me to get down there? He's like, well, the elevator is a mess and you have to go all the way. He goes, you really just take the stairs, dude. And I was like, the stairs? He's like, yeah, just take the stairs. You'll be fine. And I was like, okay. But usually the way the stairs work is like, you can't open the doors from the stairwell. So I was like, all right. Thinking like, okay, what's the worst that could happen? So I go out of the concourse. I go down the stairs. I go to the level below that I need to get to. And I go to turn the door, and it's locked. So I was like, all right, that's not good. So then I go down one more level, and I'm like, if you walk out here, you're filtered right back in to the front area where the people haven't had their ticket scanned, and your ticket has already been scanned. So I was like, well, I can't go back up the stairs now. So how bad is this going to be? It's one of those moments. Like, is this going to be one of these all-time awful stories? It's like, well, I'm not quite there yet. Go up to the ticket lady. She scans it, says the ticket's already been used. She looks at me, and I go, hey, look. I'm like, this is exactly what happened. She's like, this is so beyond me. She's like, I have to get somebody from security. And I'm hoping in Boston.
And that guy's really busy right now.
Yeah. But I'm still hoping like 50-50 chance. Like, I don't usually play that card very often, but I'm thinking like,
Of all places.
Yeah. Like if it's in the Garden, it's a security guard my age. Like, at least I'll kind of understand. Like, all right, yeah, it makes sense. And a dude comes over, and I explain it to him, and he's just looking at me. He's like, really, man? This is the clinchy game of the finals, and you're going to tell me that you already came in?
Fucking around in staircases. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And I was like, look, this is what the guy told me. And I kind of knew it was bad advice immediately. I figured like maybe somebody would open the door, but nobody opened the door. So yeah, that's exactly what happened. And I was like, I did TV here for the Celtics for a long time. Like,
Yes.
You just brought it out. He just reached out.
I fucking, you guys can make fun of me all you want.
I'm not.
What do you think I was gonna turn around? Well,
oh shucks.
Guess I'm not going.
Damn. Yeah.
Because there were still a couple calls that could have been made and would have been made to be like, hey, I fucked up, but you got to help me out here. So the guy looks at me just deadpans. He's like, I have no idea who you are. That's irrelevant to me. And I was like, all right, good stuff. Good
Do you
stuff.
have Google on your
like,
phone?
Nice. Yeah, I wasn't going to go there. Like, no, I used to have hair. I shaved it. No, look for the side. So he's like, I got to grab my supervisor. And the guy's like, tell me exactly what you did. And I went, this is what I did. This is when I came in. I go, this is the email of the original ticket. Okay. And this is what happened. And then he went back, and then he comes back again. He goes, did you go? He goes, which direction when you came up the stairs and your ticket was scanned? Which direction did you go? And I was like, I took a right. He goes, yep. I was like, wait, I kind of have like a 50-50 chance on that.
Right. That's a coin flip.
He's like, yeah, you're fine. So go up, tell my friend. He's like, what were you going to do? I was like, start texting a couple people is what I was going to do. But I don't want to say I almost missed game 5 last night, but there was this fleeting moment of, did you really just fucking do this?
Isn't it funny when you do so, like you just know something is a terrible idea and you're like, I don't know, I kind of don't have any other options right now. And then you're like, yeah, I could just easily not done that and avoided all this bullshit, but I just did it even though I knew it was a bad idea.
Just taking bad advice. And it's those people, like, they've got no accountability. It's not like you're in a Walmart asking somebody where the bathroom is. Like, you're going to find that guy and be like, hey, that wasn't the fucking bathroom at all. What the heck was that? But he's one person in a stadium of 50,000 people, and he's like, oh, yeah, that way. Like, there's no accountability for those people. They know it's just, there's too many people for them they can just say whatever they want. So directions in stadiums, I agree. We should be doing better.
Yeah, I shouldn't have listened, but I also shouldn't have put myself in that situation. So
Yeah, the guy had a shirt on. He told you to do something, right? I mean, that's what we're taught. Like, listen to the people that seem like they know what they're talking about.
Yeah.
See something, say
Anybody
something.
in a staff shirt, they can tell me anything. I'll do. Yeah, all right, sure. Yeah,
Right, yeah, exactly.
What you want to do is go with the 300s and then you jump down into section 12. Don't worry about it.
It could be a really funny skit, of just like dudes impersonating staff people at events and just telling people to do the dumbest shit ever.
I was thinking about it because I'm not somebody that is narcissistic enough to feel like they have to share every fucking moment of their life and update everyone on it. Where it's like, oh my God, you have no idea what I just did. First of all, it's sort of embarrassing. So why would I be like, hey, let me
10-part Instagram story of your journeys.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, so this is the second supervisor, and he told me he's coming back. Like, I'm freaking out. Does that sound like someone? You know? But I would never post anything like that. But then I thought about the people that do post stuff like that, and I would like imagine how that plays out. Like, you guys have seen the car accident one, right? Where the guy is in a car and he gets rammed by a huge Dodge truck with a big grill brush guard on the front. And immediately after he posts like, hey, there's a camera footage of this person. They ran me off the road because they thought I was going too slow. 75, 80% of the replies were blaming the person in the car that got rear-ended.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that.
I would never share only knowing that it'd be like, well, you shouldn't have done that, or you should have been, these security guards are only making this much, and how dare you, whatever. I was like, I didn't even get mad at him.
We're talking salaries.
Yeah. But that's and I made sure like I wasn't going to get mad. It was my mistake, but I wasn't going to just go across the street to the Harp and text my buddy being like, my bad. See you at 11:30.
You just want it to be true, like you wanted it to be that easy for you to get to the thing. Like, I think the second to last time I went to crypto, they'd done away with the smoking area. But I asked a guy, cooler, younger security guy. And he's like, "Oh yeah, you can go up there right now." I go out there. There's just signs everywhere. There's no more, smokers, whatever those receptacles. And I'm like, that one guy told me I want it to be true, and then it's like a fucking 3-alarm fire all of a sudden. They're like, you can't be out here doing that. And it's like, well, the one guy told me, and they're like, we don't care. I don't know who you're talking about. I wanted it to be true, but I knew it was a bad idea.
Yeah. What's like the job rating for those type of things? Because like, you don't have to be right when you're talking to patrons. Ever.
No,
like, is your
I'll
boss
never
gonna
see
be like,
you
hey,
again.
You screwed up like 5 or 6 times this week. And it's like, nobody cares. There's no like accountability in that whatsoever. You can give 10 straight people bad directions and it won't matter.
Yeah. I should have known better. I've been in that building enough times to know.
You knew deep down, you knew. Yeah.
I don't know what
subconscious thing,
because he was saying specific. He was like, go to this section and off of that staircase. So I was like, okay, maybe there's some hack where that staircase in particular, you can go. And then the other ones close behind you, like every other arena that any of us have ever been to, but whatever, all worked out. Not a big deal. Yep. Banner 18. Okay, let's go. Somebody got dumped. All right, here we go. 25. Fan of the podcast, been listening since 2019. Stats 6 foot 230, aspiring to get swole, 1 plate squat and bench. You gotta get those numbers up, bro. 230. But gaining weight in the wrong places. I'm a huge Georgia fan. Went there late teens. My ex-girlfriend and I met in computer science class we had back in 2019 when I was finishing my sophomore year. My 26-year-old girlfriend of 5 years recently broke up with me, and I'm heartbroken. Been in a serious relationship since college. She moved to my hometown to work her first job out of school. Unfortunately, over the last year, we'd grown apart. We were no longer compatible like we were in college. We were beginning to look for leases and move in together. For the first time, we decided it's better to separate than continuing to stay together when it hasn't worked out over the last year. Until I dated her, I'd not been in a relationship that lasted more than 6 months, so I'm devastated. She was my first real love, and I thought I'd marry her and see the world together. As a 25-year-old man who lives with his parents in his hometown, how do you move on and get back into the dating scene? I live in Middle Georgia and have a career in software engineering. I've been waiting to relocate to Atlanta within the company since I took a job a year ago. Transferring is not difficult, according to my boss, since we're just a small company and fairly flexible. I still want to stay home for several more months to continue to save aggressively and finish up my current projects. I'm obviously heartbroken since it's been less than 24 hours since. Dude, you sent this email within a day after? Yeah, you're a fucking disaster right now. It's all right. But your phrase, I'd rather be lonely than annoyed, rings in my head. Oh, no. I'm not trying to build any kind of army that buys into that. I'm just telling
Talk
you how
about bad
I feel.
advice.
Yeah. That's honestly the worst advice. Yeah.
That's a very specific type of person.
Brian's just a dude in a
That needs
stadium
that.
giving advice. So
Just telling any of you guys that are really buying into that whole
Yeah.
premise of how I see my life and trying to apply it to your future, just
You gotta
next time you go to a pizza parlor and there's a guy sitting at the bar by himself, 78, asking to turn up the Orioles game, right? Look at that. Stare that down and say, is that what you want to sign up for? And then he's sitting there talking to the bartender. It's like, oh, I think their bullpen's pretty good. We'll see you next Tuesday. You got onion rings?
Oh, man.
Try not to eat them often, but so good. All right. I can live with my parents until I'm ready to move out, as I've been living with them since I graduated college in 21, but I'm definitely ready to get out of the house and head to the big city for better jobs and opportunities. Do you have any advice or suggestions for moving on and getting back on your feet after what feels like my own version of 2002? Wow, this guy is super locked in. All right. Yeah, look, I don't know. I've got the two bad breakups. They were both bad for different reasons, vastly different reasons. The first one really hurts in a way that you're never, ever prepared for. It just sucks, man. It's like, oh my God. So this is what's happening to you. This is the first time it's ever happened to you. So the first time it hurts, like you don't have anything else to compare it to. So first of all, you're going to get through it. It doesn't feel that way right now. You are going to get through it. Some people move on really fast. Other people hang on to things a lot longer. I think what I like from what you're saying is you are already kind of planning the next phase of your life to try to get yourself out of what will probably be a long ride. The best thing you can do is start dating somebody. All right. And even if that's unhealthy and the relationship isn't all that great and it's some kind of rebound, it's something, and it can even feel selfish, but it's not like it hasn't been done to us as well. But you need to put yourself in a position to allow yourself to be in the mix with other people, because sitting at home at your parents' place long term, there's not going to be anything that disrupts your routine. And you're not going to be super desirable, even though I like your frame, when you're going out. Like, you have to work on you being somebody desirable for the next relationship that you're going to have. Some people need like all this space, and I've got to work on me first and all that kind of stuff. Like, sure, fine, if that's the way it works for you. But I think most often, like, it's just hard for you to accept, okay, this is over. I need to start dating somebody immediately. There's probably someone listening right now going, that's terrible advice. But I'm just telling you, every day that I wasted not wanting to be with anybody else because I was heartbroken is not a day that I was like, great use of time. All right. I've never thought and be like, it's really cool how you prolonged your misery there for a year. That was fucking awesome, man. Great use of a year. We only get so many of these.
Great self-reflection, yeah.
Now, it was impossible to talk me out of that state of mind at that time because I was a fucking loser, couldn't rub two 20s together. And the girl that I thought I was going to marry was now dating a guy in the mix, and I wasn't getting invited on any weddings or any other shit on top of everybody else. Oof. And then people were like, don't come back to town for a while. I was like, oh my God.
What do you mean I live here? Yeah.
Yeah. And then it's like, how's Ryan doing? Do you talk to him? I heard he's living in a cottage doing the shingles, and his truck didn't pass inspection. Okay. So there wasn't a lot of awesome updates from your boy on that one. But what I wish I had done is just said, hey, I don't have a lot to offer right now, but at least I got my own pad and I'm on fucking Martha's Vineyard. So why don't you just, bat some eyes at the hostess, go to a fucking movie, grab a little picnic. You're good at making sandwiches, some arugula, a baguette, dry turkey, not this oily shit that we get at some of these delis. Throw something together, no mayo, maybe a nice Italian dressing spread, pre-pack the sandwiches, go out to Chillmark, head up to Squibby, and just fucking do something, man. Get out of the house. Stop thinking about her. And does that mean you're using this other person? Not really. I just made fucking sandwiches. So
who's using who? When you think about it.
Yeah, right. And they're good. I'm good at making them. I don't know what to tell you. So you have to find a way to get to that point. And I know that it's really, really hard.
I don't think I've ever had a bad breakup. I think I've always been the breaker-upper. I would just have said
heartbreaker.
Yeah, jeez.
The worst one, I think I found she had become a drug addict and was stealing from me. But that was like Academy Street guy. That was a long time ago. But even then,
Easier to
I was
move
like,
on.
I guess I'm betrayed, but that still doesn't really count as like me getting dumped. It was way easier to move on. But so I really don't have advice for that. What I would have said is just kind of what Ryan said, is just to go do something, and that's easier said than done. But I guess the good news is you're better than you were when you sent this email, because it was that fucking point of impact that you sent this email. So
Did you know she was a junkie or a thief first?
it was tough. It was kind of like two horses coming after the turn. I didn't know which one. It was kind of at the same time. It was just like, oh, that's where my fucking shit has been going. And I was like, oh, well, this is super easy. I was like, well, obviously we're broken up, right? And she's like, what? Like, yeah, obviously. It was just like cash. I was working those 2 jobs, living on in an apartment after I got kicked out of college for that 1 year. And it was like a girl that I was like a cool girl in high school. And I was like, fuck, this is like, now I'm the cool guy. I've got a crib. Let's go. And then it was just like, the money from the cigar box was like light. And I'm like, is it because we got too many friends here? I like all these guys. And then it found out it was her.
That sucks.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, the good news is the guy's young and he's about to move to a big city. So I kind of feel like, I know it's, again, as you said, Ryan, like it's easy for us to say as older guys have kind of been through this, but if you were stuck in your small town with the job that you have and maybe you weren't happy with how things were going, but like it does sound like there's like some sort of like change that's going to happen at some point in your life, and that's awesome because that's what you need. You need a change. And then once you get, who knows how long are you in this town that you're in before you move? Like if it's like a year, don't just like wallow in self-pity for a year, but you could take some time. If it's a couple of months, be bummed out, and then just be a new guy when you go to Atlanta whenever you make that transfer. So I kind of feel like naturally your life has sort of carved out a good path for you to sort of get over this and start meeting new people in a new place in a fun city. So it might suck now. Sometimes it also feels good to just be shitty and just be sad. And for a while, like I remember, my first girl that I was really into and dated forever in high school, like, you kind of like, you start listening to sad songs and you're just like in that mood. You don't want to get out of that mood, and you just
making a Van Morrison mixtape.
Couple of sad boys like, here. What the fuck?
This is where I went to that big John Mayer phase. And I got into John Mayer because I'm like, man, this guy's like really singing to me right now. But the good news is like there is some sort of natural ending to that. So I would say, do your thing for a while, but definitely push for that Atlanta move because that's kind of gonna change your vibes.
And appreciate whatever dudes you have that are still in this town, right? I mean, you're gonna maybe you haven't even spent as much time as you'd like to. Maybe you can use this as an excuse to like reconnect and a
rekindling of the dudes.
Yeah, and you have this finite timeline where you're going to be out soon anyway. So, I mean, it's not like you're moving states or whatever, but maybe that's another thing you can lean on and just be like, hey, I really feel like we should connect or rekindle, like you said. Do you guys want to do anything this weekend? And then you have that, plus that your timeline is creeping towards moving to Atlanta as well. So, I think you got stuff that you could focus on.
Yeah, I actually think there's a ton of positives in this email, okay? Because this is not, and I know the South can be a little bit different, and I just believe that. But the reality is this is your first real one, so you don't know anything else. You can't even think about other options, and you're 25, and the world is going to be full of options. And I promise you are going to think back at this moment when you meet the next person, and you're going to go, oh my God. Whether you weren't ready now or she wasn't ready, you just said it wasn't going well. So then it wasn't going well for a year, but then you're like, hey, let's get a place together. Well, guess what was probably not going to happen? It probably wasn't going to go better if it wasn't going well for a year 5, and then you were going to move in together and now everything's going to be sick. I don't know. Maybe. I mean, unless the stress was based on you not having a place to live together, but it sounds like there was other stuff. And even within 24 hours of this all happening and you writing this email, you're already talking about plans, like Cerruti pointed out. The best part of the email is that you're already allowing yourself to think about, okay, what's the next move? Be motivated by it. If I can get to 2 plates on each side, all right?
There you go.
I remember just thinking about like the new guy with every tricep pull down. That went on for years. I'd be like, motherfucker.
He's PR every day.
Yeah. Like, all right, who does 8 reps? I'll do 9. So I think there's a lot of positives in here. And then who knows? There's always you never know about this one, but the U-turn of life where you'd be like, oh, there's so much pressure and I didn't really know what to do. And I was at this stage in my life and I wasn't really thinking clearly, like, let's get back together. But what you can't do if you want to get back together with her is, unfortunately, because we're all fucked up, you can't tell her that you desperately want to get back together with her. You have to like chill out.
Correct.
You got to do so well in this time and not say a word to her. That's how it works.
Yeah, there's a good chance. Like you go to Atlanta, things are going well. She sees your Instagram stories, and maybe she reaches out, which is not a good thing. I don't think you even want that at that point if you're having a good time there. So beware.
Go 185 for 3 post. Okay. I think we got that one.
It is funny though, really quickly, how like when you break up with somebody, you just remember, or so when somebody breaks up with you, you really do just remember the good shit. You don't remember any of the bad stuff, and you're like, oh, it was so fun, but it's like the change that really screws you up because like, oh, I had this routine, but you just ignore all of these red flags because you're just kind of sad because you got dumped. But a lot of times, like I don't know, this might not be the worst thing in the world for our guy.
Yeah, that's why the Forgetting Sarah Marshall thing, I always had a problem. It's a great movie, but I just always had a problem with the premise. It's like, okay, so he gets dumped by this unbelievable catch, because she's on TV on top of also being really attractive. But then it's like, okay, but now there's just a run on all these attractive girls that can't stop sleeping with him. Like he's having a much better time than from what I remember it being like. So it's like, I'm like, I know he's eating cereal a lot, but like, another 8's leaving his house.
Right.
Yeah. Didn't really do anything. Kind of just sits around a lot. All right. So let's get to another email. Should I have helped? Blind one here. 24 years old, 6'3", 220. Wish more of it was muscle. Maybe you set some skeletal muscle goals. Who knows? I was playing pickup basketball in my friend's backyard. Oh, so this wasn't even like, okay. He has a full court. We have a group of 15 or so guys. Oh, so this is a little bit more than just horse with your hammered uncle. 15 guys that play there a few times a week. I'm on the bottom half of impact and skill level, but I make smart passes and set off-ball screens, hit open shots, and rebound occasionally. Real Leon Poe on our hands here. So 2 of the best players were guarding each other tonight, and the guy on the other team was cooking my teammate, playing at 21. He probably was scoring, assisting on 15 points per game. Usually, when he drives in my direction, I slide over to help. I guard the slowest non-shooting bigs that come to the run, so I figure it makes sense to shut off drives because I can recover to these non-shooters in time. Tonight, in one of the last games, I slid over and helped. The kid I was guarding was over 300 pounds, was not making any shots. The good player retreated, backed it out. My teammate starts yelling at me, Tim, you need to get the fuck out of my way on these drives. That is not help. What was I supposed to do? Let someone blow by? If we're casually on the perimeter, I'll go third man through, but this was a direct drive at me. Was he upset about losing or getting cooked by this guy? I'm not a good defender, but this is not a high level enough run to be screamed at by a guy who didn't play organized ball growing up. Should I have helped? I'm going to side with you on this one. It sounds like your boy was getting absolutely worked by the other guy, so he was just mad at the world the entire time, and that's what people do. It's like Luka yelling at the refs after something. It's like a lot of players yelling at the refs, where there's this immediate instinct of competitiveness where you lose all rational thought in those moments. It
has to be someone's fault, right?
Yeah. I've done it. Okay. I've done this. So maybe not on help defense, but you understand the point. Like it's not anything I'd ever be proud of, but what your buddy is doing is he's yelling at you because he really wants to yell at himself. So he doesn't need to do that. It would have been nice if you just gave it right back to him. And based on the know your personnel, it sounds like you do know your personnel. And if there's a 300-pounder out there who's not a threat from 3, and maybe you weren't positioned perfectly, I don't need to see the video of it. But I think what this is a very clear case of him being so mad about how the game was going. He was going to take it out on somebody else, and you just happened to be the target.
Yeah, he probably would have got a quick shut the fuck up from me in a similar tone as was provided to me. That's probably where I would have left it unless it wanted to go anywhere else. But yeah, I know what you're talking about. I mean, I have those reactions. Like I could be considered clumsy just at times in my house, dropping stuff. Dropped a bottle of Crystal hot sauce yesterday. So mad. Immediately.
How'd it go? Give us a breakdown.
Well,
Spare no detail.
I got probably 80% of it up. It was pretty late. It was after Bill's pod. So I actually kind of shoved it in the corner with a bunch of paper towels. I'm going to go handle that after this. But I was like, yeah, no, not my proudest moment. I got the big pieces.
That's how ants happen.
I know. I'm gonna handle it. But I think immediately I was just like, why was that there? And it's like, it doesn't matter why it was there. Why'd you fucking knock it over? How about that? So that's just, even from little things, it can happen.
I don't know. I feel like it doesn't sound like it's a competitive enough level of basketball. Like, would you do this at the Y? If somebody did that to me at the Y, I'd be pissed off. And I think that could be a pretty high competitive game depending on what it is. I don't know. I feel like if you're in somebody's backyard, even if it actually is 5-on-5 and you got 15 dudes and it's like, there's a hierarchy of people, shouldn't be yelling out defensive rotations. Like that's just a dick move. So I don't know if the guy's an asshole in general. I don't know if you're really that close to him or whatever. It probably doesn't matter. I don't think you have to say anything to him, but yeah, he's more mad at himself than he is at you. And I wouldn't let this be a habit of people just yelling at you at basketball games because again, as we talked about, this really didn't seem like it was that much of your fault. So I don't know. It probably was just like kind of a one-off thing. I just let it slide.
Yeah, I think getting yelled at by a teammate in a basketball game, there's different stages of it. Like there's some that I think we all just know, like that's not where that should happen. I played for a men's league in Vermont where I was the only guy of the starting five that didn't play in college.
Semi-pro?
Yeah, semi-pro. Yeah, we traveled a little bit per diem.
Nice.
Not a big deal. And there was a guy that I had to guard. I think his name is Matty Johnson. He was like a Vermont legend. He was like a really, really good player. He's older than me. And he was just one of these guys who was like smooth, saw the game a different way. It wasn't like he was just this awesome scorer. And I mean, the other guys that I played with ended up becoming like coaches. All right. So these guys were another level of like what I even understood about the game at that time. And I remember like the guy wasn't really shooting because he was just one of those really good players who's kind of in control of everything, but he could still score whenever he wanted to, but he wasn't like really going at me. So I started thinking like, oh, well, maybe I can cheat off of this guy a little bit. And the second I cheated off of him, he threw a pass and like cut baseline, came back and then finished. And it was like a level of, he knew what he was doing the whole time. He read what I was starting to do through the first few possessions. And then he was kind of like, this guy has no idea how good I actually am. And I'd heard about him. Everybody told him, he's fucking awesome. And you're going to have to guard him tonight. And when I left him and he scored the layup, the guy on my team calls timeout and was like, you can't fucking leave. And I was,
oh no,
I didn't love it, man. I didn't love it. But in that setting, he was right. And all of those guys were better than me. And so I had to eat it. I had to take it.
This sounds like more of the LeBron Mario Chalmers thing where he's just looking for somebody to blame, though, for something that he might have done.
Yeah. Yeah. Like Tristan Thompson's not my favorite, but when Tristan went back at LeBron being like, stop yelling at us, like stop screaming at me. And then LeBron had like a realization because I think there was a respect for Tristan because he'd been around same agency where LeBron was like one of the few times I've ever seen LeBron after he mistakenly blamed somebody else for something, then kind of had an epiphany of like, oh, maybe I shouldn't have done that. But again, if LeBron's yelling at you in a pickup game, I think most of us would actually have to take it. Even
I
if
would
he
be
was
fine
late
with
on
that.
the rotation. Yeah.
Means something's
Okay.
all right.
Good pod. I enjoyed today. This is a lot of fun. Thanks to Wargon, Cerruti, and Kyle. Check out our YouTube channel on YouTube and subscribe. And the Ryen Russillo podcast for Spot.